Welcome everyone to our March open mic night. Our first speaker is Marc from INETCO.
Great, hello everyone. Thanks very much, Eddie. I think I'll start off with a little bit of a story. I know a number of you are involved in startups, thinking about startups, et cetera, so I'll kind of make it a little bit relevant there. 8 years ago now, the CEO of INETCO, who was employee number 10, there were 9 technical people before him, invited me in one day and he said, I want you to come and look at this real-time network monitoring platform that my engineers have built. I said, okay, came in and I spent 3 hours with the founder. And I left, and I think I understood at the end of that what a real-time network monitoring platform was, but I really didn't know what to do with it. So I went into Bijan, who's the CEO. He said, how did the conversation go? And I said, well, it was good. I get it. It's neat. What are you going to do with it? And he said, well, why don't you start on Monday? We'll figure that out. So long story short, that's how I became employee number 11. I hope I'm a little bit better at describing what a real-time network monitoring platform is for tonight. Let's see if 8 years of experience has helped. We deal a lot with banks, payment processors, who are really, really trying hard to understand their customers, you and I, and why we bank, why we don't bank, where we go, what we do. And it's this interesting conundrum where banks have a phenomenal amount of transaction data. I mean, everything we do, they have to collect it, at least for accounting reasons, and to move the money the right way. But they really struggle to figure out how to harness that to actually drive decisions and determine how to optimize their experience and go after customers. And so we see 3 reasons why banks are trying to get at their transactional data. One is this notion of omnichannel, which is really just the idea that it shouldn't matter how you want to interact with the bank, you should be able to do it. Mobile, branch, ATM, et cetera. So omnichannel is part of it. Trying to understand the customer is really the second driver for getting at transaction data. And the third is banks are subject to a phenomenal amount of regulation, as I'm sure most of you in the room know. And a lot of that has to do with understanding specific types of transactions and what people are doing and where they're going. This is a quote from Celent, and it's a good analyst quote. And the reason you can tell it's a good analyst quote is because it has 2 statistics in it. That's the criteria. 1 statistic, junior analyst. 2, senior analyst. Joking aside, Celent is really, they're actually a great analyst firm in the financial services space. But I always laugh when I look at this quote because if 53% of banks think they need this forward-looking view of customers to be competitive, what's the inverse? What are the other 47% doing? Backward-looking, coarse-grained view? Anyways, I don't understand, but we'll move on. So, what is this transaction data that I'm talking about, this sort of mythical rainbows and unicorns? It's basically a complete record of the customer's interaction, regardless of channel and regardless of how they choose to work with you. And it's a little bit like writing a story. If anyone's ever done journalism training, the who, what, where, when, why, how much, really are your core questions that you're trying to answer as a journalist. It's not that different if you're a data analyst in a bank. You're just trying to answer it at a different scale. So we're trying to figure out who did we serve, where did they interact, what did they do, how long did it take? Now, the challenge with that, and I think the reason this is so hard for so many banks to do, is because that data doesn't live in one place. It lives in hundreds or thousands of places. They're in different technology stacks. They're managed by different people. There's political lines you have to cross to get there. And so it's quite difficult. The reason this diagram has all these colors on it is not just because I like colors, which I do, but it's trying to express there's a lot of diversity in these environments. And there's a lot of mixture of legacy and modern and everything else. Banks are coping with a lot of complexity. So the common use cases for this transaction data, and those of you who I've spoken to around the room have heard me talk about this, it's sort of a binary choice here between the IT teams who they need to look at transaction data because they have to keep really complicated systems running. They have to keep them performing, behaving properly so that when I choose to move funds from one account to another, it moves in a heartbeat. So operations and support teams are one team that we work very closely with in the banking environment. The second are managers and data analysts who are trying to understand what are my customers doing and how can I serve them better. So that's really the second angle. And we have a new product that we rolled out about a month ago called INETCO Analytics that's designed for that second market. So we spent the first 7 years of our career building this product, selling it to IT departments, it's difficult. I'll be completely honest with you. It is hard selling to bank IT departments. They don't have as much money as some of the other teams in the bank. So we looked around and we said, well, these marketing folks seem to have a lot more money. Let's go there. It was a little bit more complicated than that, but that was the core of it. So here's our unique solution. What makes our software special, our secret sauce, comes back to that real-time network monitoring platform. So we make it extremely easy for banks to get at this transactional data, regardless of how they want to use it. So instead of having to tap into all those systems and figure out this whole rainbow of complexity, we capture the data off the network. We can see every transaction. We can see it regardless of how the application is built. So if a purple piece is talking to a blue piece, which is talking to a yellow piece, stop me if that's too much technical detail for anyone in the room. I don't want to go too deep. We can still intercept it and we can figure out what's going on. So our secret sauce is making it really easy and consistent and repeatable to get at this transaction data. And that's what banks struggle with, and that's the problem we're solving. And whether that's for IT or that's for line of business. And then we've productized this in two ways. The INETCO Insight product was the one that we basically formed the company around, which was the notion of this real-time network monitoring, getting at this transaction data, and what I think of as kind of the first order application of it. You know, you're a bunch of technology guys, you get this transaction data, the first thing you think of is, we can tell you which ones are fast and slow. So we built a product around that. With the analytics product, though, we're looking at the second order application of that data now, which is, okay, now that we've got it, now that there's all this rich data in here, let's find a way to expose it to line of business so that they can make decisions off of it. And I think there's all sorts of other applications here we'll get into, but this is really where we are today with the two products in the market. Quick overview of the company. We have offices in Vancouver and London now. We have a global partner network. We've acquired partners like NCR, who's very big in the retail banking space. And these are some of our customers now. So we're upwards of 50 customers. We've got some great names from very small to very big. So it's been a real success for us, but 8 years in. Now, I guess the inevitable question is sort of, why am I here? The inevitable question is, who are these guys? But no, the inevitable question is, why am I here tonight? I'm here for two reasons. I mean, one, we just wanted to share our story. But I think the other reason is we're in an aggressive growth stage as a company. So if anyone wants to write a check for between $5 and $10 million, I can tell you about the terms, and I can bring a sheet out for you. No, seriously. And then the second piece is, if anyone's in that sort of startup phase and you're building a customer analytics product, you need access to transaction data, we're really open to working with you around the analytics platform to find ways to bring some of the unique data that we collect out of these environments into your product. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions.
Hi. I was just wondering what kind of data it actually is, like, and also how much is it? Like, how many transactions are there in a day, just to get a sense of what you guys are dealing with? And is it like, you know, guys cashing checks? Is it them taking money out of an ATM? Is it them paying a bill? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, good questions. So the transactions most of the transactions we monitor today are payments-oriented ones. So they could be you withdrawing cash at an ATM, could be a retail purchase you're making at a point of sale or a retail location, could be an account-to-account transfer, any kind of banking transaction like that. There's a lot of them. One of our largest customers, when they hit their Christmas peak, they're running probably upwards of 1,000 transactions a second, just things flying off the shelf, people buying them. The transactions are not particularly complicated, any one of them, but when you start to look at the chain they have to follow through a bank's systems, then it gets very complicated. There's lots of different steps and handoffs and handshakes and points for things to go wrong.
Hi. Question. Based on what you said, I don't know anything about computers. You guys are monitoring their networks, correct? Specifically with banking transactions. What risks, if any, are there for data breaching? And if there are risks, how do you mitigate that?
Okay. Well, good. So we're on the same page. I don't know anything about computers either, so we're in we're in good shape there. It's an interesting thing. Number one, we're always deployed within the bank's data center. So we're in a secure zone. They have their own security protocols around that. But the other piece is we have a really rich security model in the product. So we do all sorts of fancy stuff to make sure that your credit card number, for instance, never appears anywhere in our software. It doesn't even hit disk for any tiny period of time. So we have the benefit of having designed that model with a couple of the really big payment processors. So we're pretty comfortable that everything we have is extremely secure. But it doesn't stop every single bank from wanting to do their own due diligence on that model. We do it every single sale. We go through that process.
I've seen a lot of similar network monitoring products and solutions. Some of them may be well integrated, some of them not well integrated. By the way, I come from the banking side of it, so I've seen some of these solutions in the past. Curious about why yours is very different from the ones out there. Who do you think are the first one or two that you run into? And I'm curious also about how much fraud analytics comes from this. If you can highlight that, will be good.
Okay. So I'll kind of draw a picture with my hands. I'm thinking of two circles, basically. So there's a group of companies we compete against that are in the network performance monitoring space. So they are sitting on the wire like we are. Their primary intent, though, is for a network team that's trying to troubleshoot a network problem. And they're really designed around that. They can do high-speed capture, a lot of data. But they don't get up to the level of a transaction. They kind of stop at layer 3, layer 4, really, in the network stack. We go all the way up to capturing that transaction level detail, so I can trace it back to an individual customer, and I can see both application and network related issues if we're on the IT side. It also means I have access to data for analytics that they simply don't have because I understand the transaction. The other side of the equation is the application performance monitoring companies. There we face IBM most often, but you've probably heard of companies like AppDynamics and New Relic, who are really looking at the performance of each piece part of that application. Works really well if they can cover the environment, but if you're dealing with a mixture of legacy and modern and there's pieces of that environment you can't instrument, going at it from the network standpoint is much more efficient. The other thing is, again, we capture every individual transaction, where most application performance monitors are designed for developers, and they're kind of taking a sample every once in a while or a trace every 200th transaction. So again, it sort of comes back to the fact that we're unique in our ability to capture every transaction in an extremely lightweight fashion. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.